All right. Well, welcome. I'm Allison Schuette, and I'm the founder and teacher at Mindful Pause Center, which is a 2-year-old. So I kind of know what it's like to be in this position of starting and growing a business. I am coming out of having taught at a university in Indiana for 18 years. And I relocated to Tacoma. I'm loving it, really happy about that. And at Mindful Pause Center, we're for people who want less stress. They're tired of stress and want more joy and well-being in their life. So I'm offering online courses and one-on-one coaching sessions, and also working with organizations that want to bring wellness programming to their staff. So it's habit-forming mindfulness practices. And what I tried to focus on today is I was imagining for most of you that lives are really busy and you might not have the opportunity to carve out space in your schedule for one more thing. So I've been trying to think about the mindfulness practices that could be micro practices so that you could do them on the fly, so to speak, as you go about your regular day. But I also didn't want you to not have a full experience, so I'll be offering practices that I talk about as on the cushion, which is when you would basically be going to the gym. It's if we were talking about that as an analogy, so that you get to have that experience of what those kinds of practices are like. And then I'm going to always try to translate that into like, how could I do this 1 minute or 3 minutes in the middle of my day? And the handout that I have at the end is oriented towards that as well. So I'm going to start by offering us a kind of framework for thinking about mindfulness, and I will also give us a definition and think about like why it's valuable for us as business owners, business leaders, and then we're just going to do a couple of different practices. I want it to be practical, I want it to be experiential, so that it's something that you get to test this out and see if it supports you in ways that would keep you interested in continuing to add this into your life. So we often talk about work-life balance. We hear that phrase a lot, or we find ourselves feeling like finding work-life balance is impossible. I don't know where you all are at with that. And I want to shift away from that metaphor of balance to something more like rhythm. So in this case, when I'm talking about balance, I'm just thinking about that image of the scales, where there's the two pans, and balance is basically there's equal weight on both. And to maintain that balance, it feels to me like you couldn't really move very much. So rhythm, I feel like, has a little bit more dynamic quality to it. And we can think about our lives as a rhythm that goes between being and doing. And our culture is really great at advocating, insisting upon, demanding doing, and it often rewards people for doing. But we do still have places in our lives where being is our mode, where we shift away from doing and go into being. It could be something very simple, like after a long spring, the first sun, and you're just feeling the warmth on your face, getting out of your car and going into your office or into your home, or being with a pet, or being in front of a fireplace, or holding a mug of something hot. It's instead of anything striving in us, it's a settling back and just resting quality. So we all do that somehow naturally. I feel like our culture needs an antidote to all of the doing that we stress. It's really taxing our nervous systems. We never really get to complete the stress cycle because it's just one thing after another after another. So this is why we're feeling exhausted, why we start feeling burnt out. So mindfulness is a practice and a quality of being, and we can through the practice, expand the qualities so that there's more of that aspect of the rhythm in our life that can help us go back into the doing. And this also specifically, I think, because our lives as business owners is so much in the doing, the introducing mindfulness and bringing some more of the being into that rhythm will be the resilience and the resourcing that we need in order to, like, I think of building a business, my experience so far has been like, I'm trying to think of it as a marathon. So I want something to support me for the long haul. So bringing in more of the being is a good way to do that. So we're just going to take a moment to list as quickly as we can all that we've done. So I'm thinking still about this category of doing, all that you've done for your business. So, I mean, you've got a couple of years under your belt. It's not like you have to remember everything. But from even like the first conversations you had with people where you dreamt up like what it would look like, to the moment you came up with your name and your logo, to getting the license, like separating your personal and your business finances, building the website, like all of that practical stuff, but all of like any kind of relationship work that you did to make it possible for you to get where you are. So including the Pierce County Business Accelerator as a resource that you took advantage of to help you get the business where it's at now. So what steps have you taken? Which phone calls have you made? Thinking about risks, maybe. How you tried to resource, like funding-wise, finances for the business. When you had those initial to-do lists, like each year of your business plan, what were you putting down as activities that you were going to try to accomplish? So you can think back to any benchmarks that you've met for yourself. And then expanding to include who else has supported you in ways that have helped you get where you are. So that could be financially, but it might be emotionally, or it could be service, that someone has done, like made your website for you because you have a friend that's in graphic design or something like that, or somebody helping you with social media. So who are the people that have been alongside you, who are encouraging? Maybe it's someone that shared your name with another person to help you get a gig, a job, an event. And you can be thinking too about people that didn't necessarily have a direct role, thinking about ancestors. So even those whom you don't know, because the lineage goes farther back than you could have ever met, thinking about the fact that you've had at your back all of these people doing all of this effort to survive, to thrive, to make family, to make community. Who are the people? And they might be family, they might also be unknown to you. We often think about land acknowledgements. So like, how is it possible that we're here in this room tonight? The chamber is obviously a piece of that. Ancestry, if we think about it that way. But we can go further back before Tacoma, before colonization, and think about the Puyallup tribe stewarding this land. And they're a piece, it feels really maybe far out for a lot of us from our experience of like starting a business, but we wouldn't be here without them. So just kind of trying to make the net pretty wide. You can also think about organizations or communities that you have benefited from. These might be social groups that you're active in. For me as a person who's teaching mindfulness, there's a huge 2,500-year tradition from East Asia, out of which the particular training I got in mindfulness practices comes. Most cultures have some kind of contemplative practices like that bring you into the present moment and ask you to listen and be more receptive rather than striving and putting forward your own will. And in America, when we hear the word mindfulness, we're more than likely benefiting from the traditions that came out of East Asia. So 2,500 years of teachers that have been passing on these practices. So that would be another thing that I would see is how did I get to where I am with my business? I couldn't be here without that 2,500 year lineage of teachers teaching teachers, teaching teachers, teaching teachers, and kind of imagine a web or a net that is a part of making it possible that I'm here. And I would include the natural world as well. For some businesses, that might be a really direct thing. If you're have a restaurant, you can't have that business without the farmers, without agriculture. For me in my mindfulness practice, it's more like nature's an inspiration, or it's a location where I can practice the meditation or walking meditation. And then we can also think about the built environment. So cities, neighborhoods. If you have an event business, you must be going to other places as opposed to having your own storefront or, yeah. So thinking about all of the spaces that you go into as making possible what you're able to do, including clients too, of course. So I think it's really helpful. I want to add Andrew and Sydney to the list of at least how we are all here tonight. It wouldn't be possible without the two of you. So our first act of being, so this is we've been thinking about the doing, who's been doing the stuff that's made it possible for us to be where we are. So our first shift to the rhythm of being is just to look at the list of things that you wrote down and see if you can just appreciate, all that you've done, all that others have done, and all the resources that have supported us that we didn't necessarily even earn. There's so much of what we do, especially as business owners, starting and growing a business that requires our personal effort. And we might not necessarily see then that even the air we breathe, the sun that shines, the rain that falls, we didn't do anything to make that happen, but we're beneficiaries of it. So if we can just take some time to shift away from for me, it's often hard to turn away from what it is that I have yet to do. Here's my business plan for the next year and for the next 3 months and for the next year. And then maybe I have a 5-year plan as well. And it can feel very daunting and overwhelming if I'm only ever focused on what I have yet to do. It can be really helpful as a reset to pause and notice everything that I've done to get where I am and all the people who've made that possible. So it doesn't feel quite so daunting because there's a sense of I didn't have to do all of this. I'm not on my own, even if I'm the only person in my business. When I stop to widen the aperture and see more broadly how I've been supported and how I got to where I am, there's a sense of being accompanied by others, supported by others, and it doesn't feel quite okay, I'm in this on my own. I have to do this all alone. There's actually ways in which I haven't had to do some of what made it possible to get me where I am. So we will return to thinking about appreciation in a practice later. So I'm hoping that this list stays with us as a way that we can remind ourselves as we think about gratitude later. One of the most fundamental skills in mindfulness kind of has to be at the one thing that happens before anything else can, is pausing. And there's something very simple about pausing. If you're in the middle of something, you just stop doing it. And if you have the same experience that I do, that's actually not so easy to do. So for me, as a university professor, when I was lesson planning, it's like, okay, I'm setting a timer, and at the end of this hour, I will have a lesson plan, and that will be good enough. And then I can move on to the next thing. So I'd set the timer, and then the timer would go off, and I'd be like, oh, 10 more minutes, just 10 more minutes. Like, I have this one problem that I can't quite solve. And so I'd keep pausing or setting the snooze on my timer, and then like an hour later, I would still be in this midst of this activity, missing out on some other things that I had promised to myself or to my family, because I just felt like this urgency around the work that was at hand. I just have to get this done. So I'm wondering if you can start to think of for yourself, is there a moment maybe today or maybe Monday or from last week where you were really in the midst of problem solving at work, and it was being a little stubborn, so you had to potentially keep at it longer than you might have expected? So I'm going to be inviting you to remember that. So if you can think, and if it's not one specific moment, but you have a sense of this happening to you more broadly, sometimes that's helpful, and because it can be hard to actually think of like the particular time when you felt like you were stuck problem solving. But it will help as we go into this first practice of pausing to try to remember what it felt like to be in that energy. And maybe I'll just ask, do you know the kind of energy I'm talking about? That sort of caught that wheel where everything, like the activation of being in the middle of something and not being able to like get up to go to the bathroom. You're like, an hour later, you're like, wow, I actually really needed to use the bathroom, or oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. And I didn't even notice that I had started getting hungry. If we activate the pause, we can go back into the work, but not as something fresh could actually be possible, because we stepped away from the rut that you're talking about of trying the same thing over and over again and seeing like I've had that thought 5 times. It's not what's going to be the solution here. Okay, so are you ready for a practice then? So if you haven't done, I'm trying to decide if I should move so that you can see me a little bit more. There's not a lot to like a seated posture, but just to give you something to try out, to imitate, you can have your feet both flat on the floor. If that ends up being uncomfortable for you, it's not something you have to stick with. But it can be helpful in terms of really sensing the support of the floor beneath you. And then some people, like, you'll want the support of the back of the chair. So you can be leaning against the back. I always end up sitting more forward myself. And then just having your hands can land where they are. I like them palms down on my thighs. It feels like a kind of grounding thing. You can also try palms up. It brings about a slightly different kind of energy. What's that?
I said energy absorber.
Yeah. Or some people like just naturally put their hands together in their laps too. And then the first place we'll start is just noticing a sense of gravity. So you might feel like that kind of tug, a little bit heaviness. Noticing where your hips and thighs are on the chair, feeling how your hands rest on top of your legs, on the quads there. And you might notice also the kind of gravity of the feet. Sometimes it's interesting to, push your heels slightly into the floor or the balls of your feet just so you actually actively sense that there's that support beneath you. And then working with gravity, you can begin to let go a little bit. So instead of holding yourself up, you're letting the chair hold you. So if you think, if your eyes close, that's great. You can also just soften the gaze and look at a point on the floor in front of you. And just calling to mind what it's like to be in one of these moments of problem solving for your business or for the work that you're doing. Something that's feeling stuck. It's kind of resisting a solution. You might imagine where you're at. If this was a specific moment, you can conjure the place where you were doing the work. And try to remember either, if you have an imagination that plays it out like a movie, you can go back through the experience of trying to solve this problem. If there's other people that are there that are a part of it, you can bring them to mind. And just notice, what is the energy like when you remember being in the middle of problem solving? You might even have a sense of, what was your posture like? How would you describe the mood? If you needed to explain to somebody the kind of energy that was there, what's the way you would describe it? Maybe agitated, frustrated, anxious, tight. And I wanted to ask you to think about this before. So when you're in this moment of problem solving, are you sitting down or are you standing up? Maybe you're standing, maybe you're pacing, maybe you're on the phone. But if you're seated, as we shift to interrupting this activity, so I would have been sitting at my desk. So I'm going to stand as a way to actually embody that I'm interrupting that activity. So if you were already standing when you were imagining this moment, I want you to sit down, but I want you to have the sense of doing it. So was anybody standing in this moment that they were imagining? Sitting down? Yeah. Okay, so do you feel comfortable standing as a way of we're gonna shift into, we have now stood up away from our work. And so I'm gonna have you go back now to this sense of the gravity of the body, but it's a little bit different because we're standing. You might just have your knees over your ankles and your hips over your knees and the shoulders generally over the hips so that there's a sense of uprightness. And feeling again, now the sense of gravity kind of goes all the way down the center of the body and through the feet. So you could feel and sense maybe the way that the feet are rooting you to the ground in this posture. And if you want to close your eyes, that's great, but sometimes that can disrupt balance. So you can also just have this soft gaze on the floor before you. And I'm going to invite you to we're just going to take 3 breaths, but we're going to do it pretty intentionally where we lengthen them from what our normal rhythm would be. And when we're inhaling, we'll be doing it through the nose. And when we're exhaling, we'll be doing it through the mouth. And you can purse the lips a little bit like through a straw so that it slows down the exhalation. And I always find it helpful to start by exhaling first to get all the air out. So pushing it all out. And then inhaling through the nose. Pushing it all out. Inhaling through the nose. Exhaling. Pushing it all out. Inhaling again. Exhaling through the mouth. And then let your breath go back to normal. It might take a while for it to return. Keeping your attention in the feet and that sense of gravity rooting you down. And if you were to try to notice and explain or describe the energy now, has it shifted from what you remembered and imagined of being in the problem-solving mode? And for some of us, maybe it won't have shifted. But be curious to see if you were to describe this energy now to somebody else. What are the adjectives that you might be using? And where are you getting your evidence for that? Like, what is it feeling like in the body that's telling you the mood has shifted or the energy has changed? Just making a mental note of that. And then you can start to move the body a little bit, kind of loosen up, come out of the posture so that we can have a little bit of discussion of that and just to see if that really brief practice brought up anything for you. So please feel free to sit back down. So the most popular definition that people will pull up, and it might be the first one that comes out if you were to Google definition of mindfulness, is from Jon Kabat-Zinn. He's one of the initial Americans who brought back these practices from East Asia. And he specifically was working in the medical establishments and created what's now known as mindfulness-based stress reduction. So there's a bunch of research that's been done based on that particular program. So a lot of people know his work, and therefore, if they're looking for a way to capture the definition, they'll present his. And I've bolded these terms that I think are really worth kind of thinking about in sequence here. It doesn't really matter what order, but so mindfulness is an awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So, so awareness is a quality that comes into being and if we're just taking the panel here that we have. Andrew, your sense of calm that was arising from the breath work and the standing, that's the awareness that arose from paying attention to the breath on purpose. So we chose it as where our attention was going to go. And the breath is happening in the present moment. So it's not in the past, it's not in the future. And then the non-judgmentally is not needing it to be any other way than it is, and just kind of being curious about, like, what does this feel like? How is the breath right now? It'll never be the same every time. Another way to understand mindfulness, I want to try like an embodied definition so you can get a sense of what it might be asking us to do. So make a fist with your right hand. It actually doesn't matter which hand. And this is going to be like all of our challenges and obstacles that we're experiencing with our business or work. It could actually be challenges in life just generally. And there's a kind of like what you've been talking about, Sydney, with there's too much work to do. You can kind of imagine why this is a fist. Like it kind of closes because there's so much to get done and you might need a little like energy. So there's a kind of aggression that comes with like, oh my God, how am I going to get this done? What's this next thing that I have to do? So typically, for me at least, what I would be doing when I'm problem solving is I'm trying to pry open the fist. And so go ahead and do that now, just so you can get a sense of like, what is the energy in the body as you're doing this? Like, how would you describe trying to get the fist to open? Tense? Resistant? Yeah. There's a lot of, for me, it feels like a kind of aggression trying to get in there, and maybe you can finally get your pinky out and then it snaps back at you, Okay, so then letting that go for just a minute. And then we'll make the fist again. So this is still the problems and challenges. But then the other hand, instead of prying, is going to be a palm. And then you're just going to place the fist in the palm. And the fist doesn't have to open or change or anything. And the palm is just accepting, allowing, noticing, observing. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do. This is difficult. This is hard. But it's just holding. Is there a way to describe what this feels like if it's energy? Is it different than the prying? Like, does it have a felt sense of difference? Can you describe it if it does? Steady? Yeah. Anything? Supporting?
Sounds like a cradle.
Cradle? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can let that go. So this is another way to understand mindfulness is the palm. Mindfulness is the palm that's not trying to change anything, but it's supporting it. The benefit of mindfulness is that because the energy is shifting from the frustration and the striving and the tugging and the resistance to steady support, that then when you come back to the fist, you have more of the responsiveness rather than reactivity to be able to address anew, like how are you going to return to the work that's at hand. So we're always coming back to doing the work, but we're bringing a different quality or care to the activity or to the work at hand. So sometimes it's helpful to just kind of feel in a way that mindfulness is this palm that we're trying to make allowances for. The actual benefits of mindfulness are not something that people are just claiming and imagining. Like, research is actually showing that our minds are different when we meditate. The pathways that are activated in different parts of the brain come up the different parts of the brain come on when we're actually in this practice of, and by meditation, I'm meaning something more about bringing our focus to a specific object. So if this object is moving instead of stationary, that could still be a form of meditation. But I guess what would determine what's going on is like, is it actually activating the different part of your mind? Nervous systems are different when we meditate, and different hormones are released. So when I'm talking about the nervous system being on and firing, we're talking about cortisol being delivered to the body, which is necessary for us to feel motivated and activated to do something. But if we're stuck with all that cortisol coursing through our body, then we never come down, which is like the hormone that's released when we're doing meditation or mindfulness practice is going to be endorphins. So it's that like feel good, feeling okay hormone that makes us feel like we're okay and cared for. And if research is correct, then what we're noticing is that mindfulness, as we practice it, will help us to navigate stress with more understanding and ease. It doesn't make stress go away, but we do have more capacity for it. Mindfulness increases focus and concentration and helps us maintain more accurate perspective on our challenges. If we end up catastrophizing something, we forget about the context in which it's happening, that it's not permanent or it's not personal. And so all of those benefits of mindfulness can actually help us improve our decision making if we're navigating stress with more understanding and ease, and we have more concentration and a better perspective, then we're going to make better decisions. Mindfulness is also operating on helping us regulate our emotions and increase our compassion, so that then that is able to help us improve relationships in terms of the kind of conflict that we might be experiencing in our work. If we're able to respond rather than react, we're going to be able to navigate those situations with a little bit more grace and ease. So when we'll be practicing with finding a home base, but when you get distracted, or if what pulls your attention is unmanageable, like it's just too intense, then I want you to be able to know what it feels like to shift attention from distraction or from some unpleasant, difficult experience back to a home base. So the first task will be like, which home base feels like it's going to provide the most steady support for you? So that's this palm. Is it going to be the body, or is it going to be breath, or is it going to be sound? And I would be curious to add movement to this too. There is walking practice. It's its own practice, but I don't know, maybe I'll end up teaching that too. We'll see. So if you could for this, and not initially, but later I'll be inviting you to think about something stressful. So yeah, thinking about something that's stressing you out right now, and just have that in mind so that when we get to that part of the practice, you'll be able to call it up. So I was going to offer this standing, seated, but if you wanted to do it standing instead, you'd certainly be welcome to. But I'm going to lead us through in the beginning here, just finding a home base, just testing some of these things out, and then choosing one, even if it's not perfect, for coming back to when we start to experience the stress. So then I'll explain these terms after we're done with the practice. So I'm going to let you choose your posture now, because maybe you don't want both feet on the floor. Maybe you want to have your legs crossed, or if you wanted to stand instead, or if you would feel more comfortable having a wall at your back, you could also be seated on the floor. And yeah, we'll start with the first home base is the body. So I'm going to have us start with gravity again. And so just noticing what it feels like to be sitting here. That can include irritation, it can include boredom, it can include distraction. Noticing the feet, where they landed. Just kind of experimenting with whether you can bring your attention inside the feet. Is there anything going on? Is there buzzing? Is there cramping? Is there a sense of heat? If you bring your awareness inside the feet, maybe you even have a sense of the bone structure. And we can try this with the hands too. It can help to close your eyes or softly gaze at a point on the floor as you do these things. And just bringing the awareness, the attention inside the hands. What sensations are here? Can you feel buzzing? And maybe as a way to introduce something, take your palms and you can rub them together like you were trying to warm your hands up. And this can just be a way to help the attention notice that there's something to be aware of inside the hands. So after you've done like rubbing hands together, then just letting them settle back down. You might feel a little bit more the kind of sensation that's in the hands. So in terms of the home base here, I'm inviting you to think about a part of the body as the home base. It could be the feet, it could be the hands, it could be something else that feels good or neutral for you. Maybe just the sense of being seated, noticing the contact between you and the chair. The home base of the body could be the awareness of the entire body sitting here. Maybe it feels good just to notice the weight of the body. And that might be enough. And then let's explore the breath. I'm not going to have you change the pace of the breath. This can just be the body breathing itself, which it's doing all the time without your needing to ask it or invite it to happen. The breath is always here. So one place to look for a home base with the breath is at the nose, which is similar to what we were doing in the previous practice. You can just sense the breath coming in over the lip. And you might have a sense of it going out. And potentially you could notice that it might be cool coming in. And then it might be a little bit warmer as it goes out of the body. Another place to have a home base with the breath is at the chest, as the rib cage expands with the lungs. And then contracts as the lungs let the air out again. So this felt sense might be more like a rising and falling at the chest. So for some people, the breath is just more palpable here. But for others, and especially of those of us who have anxiety, sometimes using the chest as a home base actually increases the anxiety. It somehow contributes to that kind of tension that comes with anxiety and worry. So then another place to explore home base for the breath is at the belly. And our diaphragm is here, and so that diaphragm is moving with each inhalation and exhalation. So it can feel like the belly is filling and then emptying. So you might try to catch, what does it feel like in the belly to breathe? If you like sitting at the beach and watching the waves on the shore, there could be a felt sensation in the belly of this, the breath coming in as the water rises on the beach, and then the wave, the surf sucking out as the breath exhales. So maybe one of those three places just feels obviously more grounding, more of that steady support. And maybe they all feel the same, and you would just choose one of these if you were going to use breath as a home base. But I also want us now to practice with the home base of hearing. So there have been sounds going on in this room since the session started, and we haven't really been noticing them or paying attention to them because our focus has been on me talking or our conversation. So here, the invitation is just to let your ears hear. Let them notice the sounds that are in the room. And there might be an impulse to label, like the ticking of the clock, or the fan that's running on some piece of equipment, or the sound of my voice, or the sound of like when our posture changes something, we might hear something. And in this moment, you're not trying to really determine what sound is making what, but just to let sound be sound. And if there's any preferences that you have, maybe the fan sounds soothing, but the clock sounds annoying, it's good to notice those preferences, and then as you're able, to kind of let them go and just receive the whole soundscape at once. And at any time as we're doing these practices, you can pause practicing, you can open your eyes, you can change your posture, especially if something's getting tight or sore. You can take a drink of water. And then if you feel up to it, you can come back into the practice, just picking up where you left off. So seeing if one of these home bases is a place that your attention can rest. Is it some felt sensation of a part of the body? Is it the weight of the body? Does the breath work for you? Or maybe it's sound. Can your attention rest on the different sounds? And just choosing one of these to be your home base, even if it doesn't feel perfect. And then, like we did before, I'm going to invite you to bring to mind what is it that's stressing you out right now? So we were thinking about this before as problem solving, and we'll use a similar strategy of trying to really make vivid this experience of stress that you're having. So if you were to play it out as a movie, or some of us might have to actually narrate it to ourselves more like a book. What is this stress in your life right now? How would you name it? How would you describe it? And when you experience it, where are you? Can you notice the places that this stress occurs? Call it to mind. And what are you doing? What's your posture? What's your location? What's your activity? And putting yourself back into that experience now. So we've made our attention, like the object of our attention is now the actual stressful experience. And there could be some things that are very interesting about this if we're bringing curiosity to it, if we're dropping judgment about it. Maybe there's things you notice about the stress that you hadn't when you were caught up in the middle of it. But it might, in fact, be sweeping you away so that the thoughts you're having right now are just about like, why am I here doing this when I could be spending my time like working this out? Or it could be emotions that come up as you reimagine the stress, the frustration, the anxiety, the apprehension, the overwhelm. Just noticing if this is unpleasant or difficult. One of the other counterintuitive aspects of mindfulness is that it's very natural, it's our habit to turn away from things that are painful and difficult. And with mindfulness, we're that open palm. We're trying to, instead of turning away, become witnesses, holding, observing what's going on. But if the experience that we're observing is overwhelming, then we need to pause from taking it as our object, and we need to move our attention and our awareness back to what I was calling the home base. This is pendulating back to that home base. So I'm going to ask you to do that now with some intention and some persistence, really shifting your focus back to some part of the body, or the weight of the body, or the body breathing itself, or sound. And it can take some time. You might find that your attention is getting pulled back, either towards the stress that you were imagining, or maybe your thoughts have just been guided away by this practice to thinking about something that happened earlier today, or worrying about something that's going to be yet to happen tonight. And if you notice that, choosing again to try the coaxing the awareness back to the home base. And then we're going to go back to the stressor. This is the titration part where we're taking small tastes of what's difficult. So letting your attention go back into the situation that's causing you stress right now. Using your imagination again to make it as vivid as you can. And re-experiencing the activity, the way it feels to be in the middle of this stress, the kind of thoughts that occur, the mood or the emotions that it rises in you. And just observing what this feels like. Instead of trying to change it in this moment, you're just witnessing this quality of stress and how it shows up in you. And you might ask yourself if you can be with it. Is there a capacity to keep bearing witness to what this feels like? The answer might very well be no, in which case we're going to be pendulating back to our home base here in a minute. And if the answer is yes, this is increasing our capacity to be with stress by just allowing it to have space. But for this practice of titration and pendulation, I'm going to ask you now to intentionally take your focus out of this remembering of the stressful activity and bringing it back to whatever you chose as your home base. So really using this power of attention that we have to notice sound or to feel the body breathing or to notice sensations in the body or the full weight of the body. We're redirecting our attention on purpose to something that's here in the present moment. These sounds, this breath, these sensations. Just seeing what quality of awareness arises from using our ability to shift our attention to this home base. And then to come out of this practice, this exercise, I invite you just to start moving the body. It can be in small ways, lifting your hands from where they landed or lifting your heels, ankles. You could start rolling the shoulders and make that a little bit bigger. If there's anything that got kind of stuck in the posture you were in, you could stretch your legs out or roll backwards. So some of what I think the benefits of working with the home base that we did would be like you're starting to bring into awareness like something that's directly happening instead of something that you're thinking might happen or could happen, or if you're dwelling on something that has happened and ruminating about it. The anchor is something that's here with us in the moment, and so it can keep us really, it can steady us because it's something that's happening now and not something later, which can help increase our concentration. So my intention with tonight, because I was really trying to think about like how would mindfulness have a place in our work life, with our hopes and motivations for creating our business, dealing with some of the uncertainty that comes up with that. And I think I want this to be like a real conversation. Is there ways in which you could imagine, even with just the nature of the practices as you've experienced it tonight, that you feel like mindfulness could be something that you would actually want to incorporate somehow? So I tried to bold how it might be a useful practice. So if you've been in the middle of problem solving, this stop, drop, and stand might be something that you would try. It's a version of what we did earlier, but I'm thinking of it as a shorter practice, just actually turning your phone over or putting it away from you or closing the laptop, and this experience of standing and feeling the feet. You can use breath, or you could look out the window if you need something that's more stimulating. Box breathing is a kind of version of what we did before, where you're working with the breath at a specific pace, but you're actually holding it in two places as well. And that can be in terms of preparation for something that's going to be challenging, because the breath is directly connected to our nervous system. So inhaling brings energy in, but exhaling brings in relaxation. So we could also think about this as inhaling is the gas and exhaling is the brake. So working specifically with it in this pattern can help the nervous system actually settle before going into something that might be stressful. And this is something a little bit about what Andrew was thinking about when we're the actors in our storylines and in our thoughts and feelings. We're immersed in them, and they can really feel like they're driving us. And that sense of our reality can be interrupted by asking, like, is what I'm thinking and feeling here really true? And we can shift into something that's more direct and tangible by using the senses to do it. So noticing what we can see or paying attention to what we can hear. This doesn't have to be a practice like what we were doing where you're spending time grounding. It's just really like using the senses in this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 way to interrupt whatever worry is so huge, to just notice actually what's tangibly here in the moment. And then gratitude is a practice that a lot of people do, I think, where maybe at the end of a day you might be noting 3 things that you're grateful for. I like to add to that, like taking one of those things that you're grateful for and just asking how it came to be in your life or how you came to receive it, which is a little bit like the practice I started with us at the very beginning of appreciation, where we're noticing our own efforts, yes, but all of the many ways that we're supported by people and places and traditions that we didn't have to do anything to benefit from. And sometimes that's a really good antidote to thinking that you're the one that has to do it all. So, thank you. Yeah, and if you're interested in more practices or having support with your practices as you do them. If you join my mailing list, you'll know some of the sessions that I'm doing that are coming up, so that would be a way that I might be able to support you. But I love, Shannon, that you mentioned the apps that you're using. I have some of those listed on the resource sheet too. If you didn't already know about them, then there's so many now. I didn't even list all of them. It's just the kind of the big ones. So there's a lot of support out there available. Much of it is free in terms of finding the practices that could really help with the needs that you have or the disposition that you have. So thank you. I appreciate the time and the attention and the willingness to try things on and just see if it works for you. That's one of the actual sort of hallmarks of mindfulness is if, see what happens. And if it's not helpful, it doesn't have to be the thing that you turn to. So, oh my goodness.